What's going on, guys? My name is Thomas Carney, and this is the Pursuit of Calling podcast. In this episode, we're talking about the power of purpose, knowing your why behind your calling. Also, real quick, you know how Cole mentioned back in his episode, he asked if we as a community had a name, and he said that he called you guys the Pursuers? What do you guys think of that? Let me know in the comments. Before we dive in, I want to ask you to send me a message. If you have any questions, or you want me to talk on a particular topic, or you just want to say some encouraging words, you can do so on Instagram or via the email that is listed in the show notes of this episode. Thank you, and let's dive in. All right, guys, so let's just get right into it. We're talking about your why, as I already probably mentioned in the intro. I spent a long time thinking about my why really early on in my pursuit of calling, a pursuit of my calling. I spent a really long time thinking that my why was just to serve others, and that's where it stopped, I thought as long as I was serving others, then I was living in my calling. However, what I discovered later, as I'm sure a lot of you already know, that the why behind your calling or calling in general is a lot more profound than that. There's a lot more to it. So what is your why? Your why is the reason and the purpose behind what you're doing in order to live in your calling. Your why, that's bigger than yourself. If the why behind your calling only affects you or only has to do with you, I don't believe that's actually your calling. If your why is I want to make more money, that's why I'm doing this particular thing. Or if your why is that so I can one day support a family, even that is too small, in my personal opinion. Your calling is big. If it only affects you, that lacks meaning. That lacks purpose, in my personal opinion, and I don't believe that's controversial. That me saying that might actually be controversial. I don't know. I was listening this morning to the Marketing Secrets podcast with Russell Brunson, and he shared a presentation done by Ryan Holiday where Ryan talked about his book, The Perennial Seller, which I've actually never read, but this was a fantastic presentation. I highly recommend at some point going and looking up this episode. Ryan Holiday is on social media. His handle is The Daily Stoic, and a lot of the time is talking about Stoic philosophy. But in this case, he's talking about how to build a business from the ground up that will last for decades. And the reason I'm talking about this will make sense in a second, because I get it. Why you were talking about your why, now you're talking about business. What are you talking about? So bear with me. But he brings up things like creating a business that isn't just for today, but it's for 10 years from now, and the people it will serve 10 years from now. He talked about business that sell physical products that last literally decades without wearing out. I have a 1999 Honda Civic EX, which is older than a lot of my friends, which is really weird to say now. It has lasted so long because the founder, Soichiro Honda, had a dream to create vehicles like no one had ever done before. Hondas last because his why was strong. The why behind these businesses is insurmountably more important than what these businesses are selling. The same is true for any individual. Here is where I'm tying it in. Your why needs to be bigger than right now. It needs to be bigger than you. Living your calling is completely reliant on you understanding this. You need to understand that your why behind your calling, behind the purpose, behind why you're here on this earth. Remember, Sean and I did a whole series called "Why Are You Here?" It was the birth of this type of podcast for myself, of the pursuit of calling. Like, your why needs to be bigger than you. I've said that maybe like 10 times within the first 4 minutes of this recording. But that's just something I know we all need to understand. To discover your calling is to discover your why. So here's a quick quote that I found from Soichiro Honda. He says, there is a Japanese proverb that literally goes, raise the sail with your strongest hand, meaning you must go after the opportunities that arise in life that you are best equipped to do. That was the whole quote from Soichiro Honda, which essentially, like he said, it means like you said, you must go after the opportunities that arise that you are most equipped, you are the best equipped to do. Personally, I believe I've been equipped in a way by being so focused on personal growth and having muscular dystonia that I can help others in a way that no one else can. So how has God equipped you? My muscular dystonia, I'm going to dive into this for a second. My muscular dystonia, as I've brought up multiple times, I say it's my muscular dystonia, but it's just my body. It's just really part of my body, me, my essence, whatever you want to say. Like one day I won't have muscular dystonia. Like when I'm in heaven, if that makes sense. That should make sense to a lot of people. But the thing about it is that I was just thinking about this today, that like I am so blessed, right, to have been growing in the way that I have because I have muscular dystonia. I wouldn't have been able to grow in the ways I've grown if I didn't have it. That's why I'm saying I'm equipped in a very particular way. I have a very specific toolbox that almost nobody else has because of my interest in personal growth and personal development that started before I was even struggling with muscular dystonia. I just believe that I have, like I've said, I've been equipped in a very particular way for a very particular purpose to provide people with the tools they need to successfully pursue their God-given calling. And I believe the way I'm meant to be doing that is directly related to the ways I've been growing as a result of my muscular dystonia. That might sound, I don't know, maybe to some people that sounds very wishy-washy. Maybe that sounds like I'm just trying to add a purpose to something that of a sucky circumstance in my life. But to me, it makes a heck of a lot of sense. Because without this muscular dystonia, I wouldn't be the man I am right now. I might not even be sitting here. I wouldn't be sitting here talking about the same things on this podcast. I might have a podcast. I don't really know. But I wouldn't be talking about the same things. I wouldn't be able to talk about the same things with the same certainty that I have right now. I know that for certain. So again, I'm going to ask you, how has God equipped you? We all have struggles. We all have pain, right? But we also we all have unique circumstances. We all have unique circumstances that God has equipped us with. Like, oh man, or should say better, that God is using to equip us. That's a better way to say that. In a very particular way. Like whenever I was initially writing out the notes for this episode, I was going to start with talking about your what. And I did a little bit of research, and I specifically was looking at what John Maxwell says about your what and your why. And he 100% was saying, focus on your why before you focus on your what. Because if you do not know what your what is, then your why, you don't know what your why is, then your what isn't going to be that good. Isn't going to be as good as it could be if your why isn't really fleshed out, or if your why isn't strong and powerful like we were talking about before. Your what is the tangible external expression of your why. So if it's the external expression of your why, then the stronger your why is, the more certain you are in your why, the more not just the more tangible, but the more influential, the more effective your what will be. That's why my Honda Civic that's from 1999 is still alive and well and has 180,000 miles on it. It's why there's a subculture around Hondas, right? It's because someone had a why strong enough. Soichiro Honda had a why strong enough to put these cars on the road, to make cars that no one else was making. So one of the ways I choose to express my calling, my why, to provide people with the tools they need to discover and pursue their God-given calling, is, eventually through coaching. But another way through this podcast. I'm choosing this podcast as the external expression of my why. I want to do the coaching and the one-on-one conversations that I have with my friends when I can speak into their lives. And a lot of times through my own personal experiences, which everybody is capable of doing. Everybody's capable of speaking to other people's lives based off your own personal experience. I don't think it really matters, though, what your what is, if I'm being completely honest. If your why is strong enough, then whatever you decide to do will be worth doing. I'm going to repeat that because it might have been a little confusing, so I'm going to say it again. I don't think it really matters what your what is. If your why is strong enough, then whatever you decide to do will be worth doing. Does that make sense? Because I think my calling would still be the same even if I didn't become a coach. But that's the direction that I've been pointed. My calling would still be the same even if I didn't have this podcast. I would still have the same drive to grow personally and to develop myself. Right? There's so many different outlets, so many different opportunities that we have to do and express the why behind our calling. And it's up to us, I believe, to choose that path a lot of the time. So, guys, I hope you liked this episode. If you liked it, give this a 5 stars on whatever platform you're on. If you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, wherever you are, give this podcast a 5-star review. Leave a comment to let me know what you thought of this episode. And again, thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.